We are Texas A&M sponsors. Texas A&M AgriLife sponsors us, and we take we're volunteers that are we're the volunteer arm of the Extension Office, and we provide, like I said, the university sponsored research based locally relevant information for South Texas. In our case, for South Texas. What we're going to cover today is some interesting stuff. So if you think about South Texas, we're going to cover our region's climate and our water, and then we're going to talk about landscape resiliency. Now, the thing about landscape resiliency is you can't talk about resiliency without talking about water. And so I have a special or advanced training in irrigation efficiency and also rainwater harvesting. And so we're going to talk about, in our resiliency piece, we're going to talk about irrigation a little bit, talk about the soil and the design and plant choices. But you can't talk about resiliency without talking about water. So we have been moved to South Texas, our San Antonio, Bexar County, has been moved to zone 9A. So 9A has a average temperature, I believe it's 20 to 25 degrees, and it will vary. We know that it varies. And of course, the heat is what we're seeing now is extreme. But so we're now in that 9A quadrant, which is the hardiness zones. And you can look that up in the USDA pieces. And we moved there in November of 23. So, okay. So the average temperatures, instead, you can see the winter temperatures are pretty moderate. And you go from 37 to 41 in December, 31 in January, 41 in December. And then, you have the 73, 75s in the in the morning temperatures. And then you see the lower temperatures. Then you see the highs. And, we had a really great July. So the July temperatures were well below 100 and in the 90, 95 or less. So we're really fortunate to have that great July. But you can see the temperatures are can be pretty rugged in the summertime. Now, this is the piece I like to talk about. So rainfall is quite interesting in San Antonio. We average a little over 30 inches of rain in the summer. I think it's 30.7 or something like that in San Antonio. And the key things you have to look at is the variability. So if you look at last year, we got 30 inches or 32 inches. And then 32 inches. And then in 22, we got 17. In 2021, we got 18. In 2020, we got 14 on an annual basis. So right now, we're sitting at 26 inches of rain so far this year through July, which is amazing, which has been really good for our landscape. In fact, you see a lot of green now in San Antonio, which is not normal this time of year. And that's really, really incredible to have that kind of rain. But the other thing that goes along with rain is intensity. So I don't know if you noticed, but the rain that we've gotten, especially in July, was pretty intense. It comes down in, inches, and I think in my house back one day, it was like 3 inches of rain, but I think it came down in about an hour and a half. It's just really powerful rain. And so that means from a resiliency standpoint and a landscape standpoint, that our landscape has to be really prepared and handled to be able to handle that kind of intensity. And so intensity is a pretty big issue. So variability, you can see the variability in the rain, 30.7, and then you can see how the average precipitation happens. So our next big month will be September, and we'll see how that goes. I notice there are some storms coming this way, so we'll see if we get the rainfall that we should get in September. Any questions about the rainfall? You guys can ask questions if you want. We have the Zoom guys will get our chance at the end. But if you want to answer questions in here, please feel free. The other challenge that we have is our soil, which is not very good, especially if you live in the north. It's very rocky, very hard. It's very shallow. And so it makes it very difficult. And of course, there's lots of clay. And the other thing is the sandy soil. So if you live in the south, so I think one of the persons I talked to earlier lives in Lavernia. Lavernia is a very sandy soil. And so they have a hard time with water as well. And so you can see the difference between the sand, takes like the sand just kind of goes right through the soil, and then clay, it's almost impossible to permeate it. And then the sandy loam is good, but then you need to have some some amendments to it, like compost. So you're gonna hear me ask you to say, I'm gonna leave you 3 or 4 things to say. And the first one is compost, compost, compost. And we're gonna talk about that in a minute. So soils are quite a difficulty here in this area. And so you probably already know that. So it's like in the north, like I live in the north, we have really limestone and really hard soil. And so it makes it kind of difficult to grow things. Like I was talking to a person from Washington State the other day, and she was telling me how she was having a hard time growing things. Because in Washington, you stick in the ground and grows. They have water all the time, and it's nice climates and pretty nice. So she was really struggling with what do you do? How do you grow these things? And there's some ways you can do it. You can have beautiful color all year round here in South Texas. So Edwards Aquifer is our main zone, or main place we get our water, and it's 8,800 acres, 8,800 miles of area, and so that's where our water comes from, and it's serving a little over 2 million people right now. And I think in the next few years, I think 2030, 2040, they're predicting like 3 million people will be taking water from Edwards Aquifer. And that means we really have to figure out how to do some saving of water and being more efficient in use of water. So before we go, before we talk about water a little more, we got to learn about plants for a second. So we're going to get a little biology lesson here real quick. So why is water important to plants? So the functions are, you can see the root functions, you can see the shoot functions, and water is vital to the life of a plant. And so it's a huge part in transporting up through the system, and then takes care of helping the plant to grow. So we're going to talk about water. And then the actual photosynthesis creates the carbohydrates, and you can read those. Transpiration, water pumps the water through it, and the water comes into the bottom of the plant. So you can see how important water is to cause this plant to grow, and then with the oxygen and carbon, it produces carbon dioxide. So, any questions about plant life? Plants? Okay. Now we'll get to my favorite part. Okay, so the water-wise recommendations are from Texas A&M AgriLife, and they've been researched and they're scientific. So what we're going to talk about is just some really ideas around how to cause your landscape to be resilient, to survive the heat, as well as thrive and grow as you get it where you want, like your flower gardens you have in your area. I'm sure you follow a lot of this stuff. Okay. So the key is soil. Okay, and there's lots of presentations we give on soil, but the key thing around soil is organic matter, and being able to amend the soil with some kind of compost. And the compost needs to be have been dried. I mean, have been cured, decomposed for a while. So you can use things like decomposed leaves and the like, or you can use the shredded stuff. But in any case, compost needs to be an organic material, and it builds the soil. It actually goes into the soil. You actually turn it into the soil, and it builds the soil, retains the moisture, increases drainage, and adds oxygen to soil. And so for new beds, when you're creating brand new beds, you want to turn in 4 to 6 inches of compost, good decomposed compost. In fact, it's even better if you make sure it's sterilized, so you don't get the weeds and the seeds and things from that. And then for existing beds, 2 inches, turn in at least pretty often before planting, and then as your plants grow, you'll want to turn in some more compost. So compost is a big thing. And David used to always say compost, compost, compost. That's the first component of a very resilient landscape. Okay, mulch. Mulch is an interesting topic. I was doing a presentation the other day at the Habitat for Humanity, and people didn't know what mulch was. And mulch is a critical component to the landscape. So compost you turn it into the soil. Mulch you put on top. And there's a recommendation going around that says 2-2-2, twice a year, 2 inches deep, and 2 inches away from the plants. Certainly 2 inches away from the plants. I like to go look at my mulch a little more often than that. I like to look at it a little bit. I walk through around my flower beds and things and make sure that the mulch is there, and just turning it a little bit or adding to it. But the key, I'm going to challenge you to do this. The key is it prevents evaporation. But the second thing is, and this is really important during our heat right now, because we're seeing these 100-degree temperatures. Go out sometime, move your mulch away, and put your hand on the soil and see what it feels like. It's a much cooler temperature. And I didn't realize, I didn't believe them, so I went and tried it. And you can move the mulch away and you can feel the difference. It may be 1 degree or 2 degrees, but it's enough where you can tell the difference. And it's a huge, huge thing. So it also reduces weeds, which we like. The other thing, it reduces soil compaction. So when you're watering, and you see it keeps the soil kind of loose, and it's from rain and overwatering. We have a lot of overhead watering, and then it decomposes for organic matter. So compost is organic matter. Mulch turns into organic matter. So, and this is something that you'll put on top of the plants, on top of the soil, to give it those benefits. And I challenge you to test those benefits. Those are pretty big benefit, especially the temperatures. Any questions on mulch? I like the hardwood, double shredded hardwood. I have some neighbors that swear by cedar, double shredded cedar. I happen to like the hardwoods, and I like them. So I probably shouldn't say this, but I'll say it anyway. I like to look and make sure it's where the hardwoods come from. So I like it to come from Texas. Especially you get some stuff from Austin and places like that, which is really good. Also, San Antonio has a mulch, free mulch at their, I think it's on Wurzbach Parkway and Garden, right around Bitters or something.
Yeah,
Starcrest and Wurzbach. You can get double shredded there too. Oh, free compost?
Certain times.
Okay. So yeah, but I prefer the hardwood, and a lot of people like the painted stuff. I don't know. I just it looks good. I just don't know how that paint decomposes. I don't know what it does. But a lot of people like it. I have some friends. My neighbors all have red, of kind of the orangey stuff. But anyway. I forgot to repeat the question. It was what kind of mulch do I like? Double shredded hardwood. You gotta remind me. Okay, watering. Here we get to my favorite. Okay, 3 types of watering: hand watering, sprayers, and drip irrigation. Now I'm a water guy, so I watched my neighbors and I watched my friends water, and we waste a lot of water. And a lot of it is because we want to have green. The problem is, I was talking to a guy the other day. He was watering so much his yard was turning yellow. And so it's people don't understand more is not better in the case of water. It's not. And so these are the 3 types of things. Now, I'm not a hand waterer. I don't have the patience for it. But I do have the other 2, and we can talk about this. And I've been testing hand watering because I was challenged by an old Aggie. He told me, he said, if you water less by hand, your plants will grow better. I said, yeah, right. And they did. It's amazing. So it's all about testing the soil, determining how deep you're watering, and make sure you're watering deeply. And I didn't buy all that stuff, but I tested it. It was very true. Okay. Advantages of hand watering. Absolutely, there's advantages. You keep it off the foliage, you put it where you want it. But the key thing is it gets you outside. And this time of year in the heat, people don't want to go outside because it's hot. And so, but hand watering does that for you. And by the way, you can hand water anytime you want. Boss hasn't cut that off. The disadvantage is it's way too time consuming. And for me, it's too time consuming. But I have tried it on my pots, and it's amazing. I'm a drip irrigation fan, so I used to have my pots on drip irrigation quite often. I still do. So I turned it off to try the hand watering, and it's my plants really look well. So you can manage it a little bit better. So I would say managing it better too. Overhead spray systems. The thing I would say about these is you need to learn how to run your controller. If you have a irrigation controller, you got to learn how to use it. The irrigators are not the people you should trust. Your landscapers, you shouldn't have to trust them to change your irrigation. And so you need to learn the controller. And the biggest issue is, and you can see the overspray. Overspray is a big thing, and you see it a lot. And so going to rotators or different kinds of sprayers will eliminate that overspray. And overhead sprayers are also, while they're convenient, people have a tendency to use them too much, and so you get a lot of runoff. And so they're costly to install. They can waste water, and they wet the foliage. And the other thing about wetting foliage, you get bacteria, you get disease, and so the more that happens, the worse it is. And so spray systems put out gallons per minute. And so you have to know how many gallons you're using when that spray system. So my encouragement is learn how to manage your irrigation controller. Make sure you got a monitor for rain. A lot of people, I've seen people water during the rain, and that's just a waste of time and money. So anyway, overhead sprayers, drip irrigation. This is my favorite, and I've given lots of presentations on this. And I believe this is the most efficient way to water, especially flower beds, vegetable gardens, and pots. Although I think in pots, I'm beginning to change a little bit other than when I leave, because you can manage a pot with hand watering probably better than drip irrigation. But it's all because if sometimes their drip irrigation is connected to other parts of sprinkler systems, and then you can overwater. So, but it's convenient. And the good thing about it, as you can see, it's applied directly to the root zone, which is really important. That way you don't get any foliage wet. It keeps foliage dry. It can use less water. And the word "can" is a good word, because one of the arguments that SAWS had by moving drip irrigation from every day to two days a week was that they were seeing people use drip irrigation extensively and actually using more water than the sprayer systems. And what happens is a lot of the new commercial buildings would build these lawns, and they would irrigate them, for several hours. And drip irrigation isn't designed to be used for hours. The water that produces from these drip lines is about a gallon an hour or less. And so the more you have to manage that to know, you have to look at it to see how deep the water's going, because you want to water deep. The disadvantage is they do get old, they do clog. And by the way, I've seen where rodents eat them too. Rodents cut them in pieces. So, any questions about drip irrigation? We're going to talk about it a little bit more in a minute, but the rule changed for SAWS, yeah. The water rule for drip irrigation did change. It changed. You can do it in stage 3. You can do it 2 days a week, Mondays and Fridays. Used to be every day. They changed it to Mondays and Fridays. So that was a big change especially for vegetable gardens. Now you can get a variance for vegetable gardens, but for vegetable gardens, it's the big thing. But yeah. But the key thing is that it puts the water where you want it. It uses less water as long as you run properly. So when you install a drip irrigation system, you want to see what it does. It'll like this is probably a 12, probably a ½ inch tubing, 12 inches. So there'll be a circle about this big, 12 inches. And then you should take a screwdriver or something and stick it in there after you turn it on, run it 10 or 15 minutes and see how deep it goes. And then you may have to run it 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Depends on, you want to get it 4 to 6 inches deep. So you can test that. And you can just put do a long handle screwdriver, stick it in the ground, and the soil will collect on that. And you can tell how deep you want to go. Most of the time, people run them for about 45 minutes to an hour to get depending on, because drip irrigation, you're running over hills in your landscape and making it pretty good. You can lose some water pressure as well. Okay, so how much water? Good question. Yeah, go ahead. Yeah, there's a. Oh, I'm sorry. Is there a rule of thumb to know how much you can do in a drip zone? Yes. In fact, I'll give it to you at the last. I have a chart that shows if you want to get 0.9 gallons per hour, you can run it up to 250 feet. Okay. Now that means 250 feet. Yeah, at that particular zone or area. But I've got one that goes down to 0.6. Okay, so the key thing here that I think a lot of people don't realize the importance of deep watering. I think people want to see the plant automatically recover. So you put enough water on it for it to recover, but then it goes back into its own groupiness after that water goes away in a few hours. So the key thing is watering it deeply. So you can see the roots in this particular example. You can see how deep they are, but you can see the feelers, and that's the key. This has to be watered, and you want to make it 4 to 6 inches deep, and you want these tiny feeder roots to do the absorption and the location of this. So you want those feeder roots to be deep. In this case, if they've been watering really shallow water, and so what happens is that plant will be okay for a day, and then a couple of days later, you're going to be back because it just can't handle that. And by the way, it's wasteful. It's just wasteful because the deeper you better, you can water these. Especially native plants, they don't need to be watered every day, and so a lot of people have a tendency to do that. I'm going to give you an example. Hold on to that question. Because there's a couple of theories out there on native plants, and I'll talk about it in a second. It's kind of interesting. I tried it and it works. Because these plants are smart. I didn't realize that, but they really can adjust themselves to the water schedule you put them on. Okay. How often? This is a question where I think it's very difficult to answer. But I have one of these, like a meter similar to this. And so I'll go out and check and see where the plants are in my pots, for example. And then sometime in the flower bed, just because it's been a few days since you have some water. So I use that to determine the depth. Screwdriver test works great as well. That's, long handle screwdriver, stick in the ground and see how deep the water is, how you bring it out and see the soil on the screwdriver. So that's another way to do it. And then various plants have different depths of roots. So trees, big oak trees have really deep roots. Your annuals aren't quite as deep. So it's better to try to figure out how much they need rather than how often. I would say, again, these meters are pretty cheap. The screwdriver works just as well. It works really nice. Okay. The other factors that go into having a resilient landscape, besides the water, we'll talk about water in a little bit in a minute, is the right plant, right space, size, and the quantity. I think we have a tendency to go buy a plant and we're not really look and see how big it's going to get. And I can tell you, for example, I wanted some crepe myrtles, so I go buy 2 crepe myrtles. One I wanted to put by the fence, the other one I wanted to put by the house. So I bought a dwarf and I bought a big one, 30-footer. So I get them home and somehow I got them reversed. So I got the 30-footer by the house, 10-footer by the fence. So now I'm spending my whole life trimming the other one off, trimming the 30-footer off the house. So be really careful with space and the right plant and where you put it. And then the other key thing is hydrozoning, where you group plants together that need similar water. So you have some of the drought tolerant plants don't need as much water, so you group them together, and then you have these other plants that need a little more water, you group them together. And it's a lot easier, it's a lot better way to manage, because otherwise you're going to overwater one around the top. So best way to do is hydrozoning, and you can tell by looking on the plant's card how much water it needs, and you can tell how much sun it needs. So make sure when you're building your garden, that's something you take into consideration. Again, the right size, the mature size, and grouping them together in water. This is a nice picture of a bunch of really nice native plants that are doing well based upon the way they're grouped together. They know the mature size. You see the big ones in the back and the sun requirements. Any questions about that? Designing your flower beds is a pretty big deal. Otherwise, you can waste a lot of time and effort. Okay, so as you do your design, this is a beautiful garden area, but you want to make sure as you're doing your design, you get a piece of graph paper or something and design it. Make sure you have the hardscape understood, and then begin to think about how much turf grass you want. A lot of people are cutting back on turf grass. Some people, like this gentleman here, has no turf grass. I happen to be a turf grass fan, so I have a little more turf grass. But grass is a big issue because it takes money to water and take care of, and flower beds have a tendency to be a little bit easier to take care of, and they're beautiful. They have beautiful flowers. I just happen to like the green of the grass. So, and then you want to use native or well-adapted plants. So the design is pretty critical to put together the kind of landscape or the kind of place that you want that to look like. I've really gotten attached to some native plants, and so I have some deer that are not my favorite, and so they do enjoy plants more than I caught one the other day eating my lantana, and so I mean it's just odd. And so these are really good examples of I can't call them all out, but I know that's Texas sage. And that one's the trumpeter vine. And I can't remember what those two are, but it's really beautiful. And they live, and they're strong and they're hardy. So I happened to take an architectural class back in February, and we had a whole discussion on native plants. And it's amazing how well and how resilient they are, as long as you put them in the right place, get the right sun and the right water. And of course, they're butterflies. And the native plants seem to be more resilient to like deer. They seem to thrive better. Even though this deer was eating my lantana, he only took a couple of little bites, and he said, I guess that's not what I want. But I happened to be watching him. I'm saying, what are you doing? And my Pride of Barbados was there, and he just walked right by that and walked right by the salvia and the thyrillus. But it's interesting to watch them. So native plants are the way to go. And then well-adapted plants, I have this one, and I don't have the Brazilian skyflower, but these two are fantastic. The deer don't bother them, and it's a Hamelia and thyrillus. I think that's how you say thyrillus. I had a guy tell me I pronounced it wrong. I probably do, but anyway, those two there are just amazing. And they're beautiful, and they have these are butterfly and also various birds go after them, and the thyrillus just thrives. They just thrive.
Gotta figure out where I'm gonna put it.
It gets big. It can
It
get up to
gets
4.
big.
Yeah, this thing can get up to 4 feet. And this thing here can get 6. So you gotta be careful where you put them or keep them trimmed. They're beautiful. And they taste very. Texas Superstars, it goes unsaid, they're being tested by Texas A&M and they created by them. David Rodriguez is real involved with Texas Superstars. And there's no question that Texas Superstars are outstanding. And you can see these, there's the Esperanza, Firebush, all those look really nice together. The key thing about Texas Superstars is they are tested, and they're tested with little soil prep, little water, and no pesticides. And the soil is just okay. And so they really do a good job of testing it. And the other good thing is they're easy to propagate. And I didn't really realize that, but they're easy to propagate and they can grow great, grow just incredible. And they have outstanding performance. And they have a really nice write-up in TexasSuperstar.com about what the requirements are for sun, for water, and what resistance they have. Are they deer resistant, not deer resistant? But birds like them, like hummingbirds, really like the firebush. And so it's really incredible, the Texas Superstars. And I've seen these in I've seen these containers in various places. So you can pick a Texas Superstar out pretty easy. But again, the nurseries have them really well. I noticed Lowe's had some of these containers. And it's just amazing that what those plants can do. Do everybody use Texas Superstars? Do you use them? Yep. Any questions about that? These plants are really good, really.
I had planted
Uh-huh.
water.
Yeah.
I don't know.
What kind of lantana was it? Texas was it new gold? New gold? Yeah, it should. That's odd. Maybe move the rocks away from them a bit. Take the heat away from them a bit. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. Maybe you can change your water habit. I'll tell you something. TexasSuperstar.com. If you get a chance, go take a look. It's a really, really good website, and there's some beautiful plants. Beautiful. So once established, native and well-adapted plants, as you can see here, provide beauty with low water usage. And so I really like this picture because it really shows you the differences of how you can put it all together, how the beauty of the reds and the purples and the whites work in there really well. And so pick the Superstars. This one? I don't right off the top of my head. I'm not off the top of my head, I don't remember. Should have looked it up. I'm sorry. Okay, lawn care. Okay. So lawn care in San Antonio is kind of difficult when you don't have rain. And so one of the things that I tell people is you and as part of this program is you want to make sure you cut your grass regularly. So you want to cut it at a higher rate this time of year. And make sure you're cutting it at a higher level than you cut it, say, in the spring, because you want the roots to be shaded. And the other thing you want to do is leave the clippings if you can. So leave the clippings so that you will get some cover for the soil and for the roots. And then if you mow it frequently, you don't want to cut off more than a third. Mowing it frequently also reduces weeds. So if you have a frequent mowing schedule, you should have less weeds. And then don't fertilize during the summer months. And don't use weed and feed if you can. Weed and feed is not a good fertilizer or pesticide. Also on watering turf grass, you want to make sure you get an inch a week on that grass. So I would suggest you get a rain gauge or use your neighbor's weather station. That's what I do. I have a neighbor has a weather station, so I can check and see how much rain we receive. And you want to manage your water to an inch a week on your turf grass. And you'll be surprised how well your turf grass does if you can get an inch a week on it. So, and you also want to spread compost. I do it twice a year, fall and winter, fall and spring, because you want to have some augments, something to improve your soil. So I use compost on top of mine, and so I would allow, and then if you have a lengthy drought, you have to allow your turf grass to go dormant. I happen to have a Bermuda, and it seems like we don't get rain for a few weeks. It tries to go dormant, so you can let it go dormant, or you can follow the water schedule that you have. So but those are some other lawn care ideas. But I want to talk to you about watering with this summary. Got to find my notes here real quick. I found it quite interesting. Give me 1 second. 1 second. 1 second. Okay, so you were asking about how much water. I was talking to some people at the botanical garden, and I probably should say, I don't know if Texas A&M recommends this or not. I don't know if David would recommend it or not. All I know is it's part of the botanical gardens process. So what they do is they have a process called 3-2-1. And it says you want the water techniques for establishing new plants. Okay. So the first 3 weeks, you water 3 times a week. Deeply water 3 times a week. The first 3 weeks of that plant. The second 2 weeks, you water twice a week. Deeply in 2 weeks. And then the final week, 1 week, you water once. And I tried that and it's amazing. Now, it works well on native plants. I don't know if it works on all plants, but it works really nice on Texas Superstars. And the lady that, I can't remember the lady's name at the botanical garden, I'll give her credit. She was talking to me about it and she said, try it, and I did. And I tried it with both the Hamelia and the Thyrillus. If I'm pronouncing that wrong, somebody will correct me, I'm sure. But it worked fine. Amazing. So you could try it and it would help you. The plants will be fine. And so if you need more water, you may need more water in the heat. Don't know. So you can try it. Yeah.
Light green or something. So is that a sign that people are?
I think there's, so I was talking to some people, excuse me, I went to a turf grass seminar, and overwatering is one of the reasons it turns yellow. It can. Or one of the reasons, I have a friend who lives in Bernie, and he sent me a picture of a dormant spot, of a spot. The rest of his yard was green, and he had this strip of dormancy in his yard. So I passed it around to some of my A&M friends, and they all came back and said he's not getting enough water on that particular piece. And sure enough, he went out and stuck a screwdriver in, and it was dry as a bone. So yeah, you can usually tell. The problem with turf grass is it'll tell you. It'll tell you. Turf grass, if you water it deeply once a week, like our water schedules once a week. If you're able to get an inch of water a week on that turf grass, it'll be fine. It'll do well, especially Bermuda, especially Zoysia. St. Augustine is a little more finicky, but my Bermuda is fine. And even if you go to 2 weeks, it'll be fine. So, but you got to get the inch of water, and so that's the reason why I think rain gauges and using people, a lot of people have these. You can go to Wonderground Weather and you can find these weather stations that are really close to your house. And you can see how much rain's been produced by that in those few days that it rained. And you just adjust your sprinkler system to that need. So it's half inch, you got a half inch, you need to put a half inch on it. And that's been my experiment. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. I don't know, try it. I'm not sure David would go with it, but I'm gonna tell you about it because the lady at the Botanical Garden swears by it, and I tried it and it worked. So that's not enough research. Yep, 2 times the next week, and then once. See what happens. Now, I don't know if she was managing by temperature or not, because right now, 100-degree temperature, you may have to augment a little bit more. You could use shade cloth, but lantana shouldn't need shade cloth. You may have the rocks too close. You may, I have a friend who also has used rock kind of as a mulch, which isn't a really good mulch. And she had to move her rocks away from her trees and from other smaller plants because they were drooping all the time. And some of that's just that those rocks create heat. Okay, so Bear County, interesting rainfall. I'll call it that, variable. Very intensity. Intensity is huge. But in July, we had a great month. And so I enjoyed watching it rain. And so I didn't care how hard it rained. And then soils, be sure you amend with compost and protect your garden with mulch. 2-2-2 mulch. I suggest you go and look at it a little bit more often because mulch does wash away and does decompose. So look at it. Irrigation. Don't sit and forget. So that's a really good point. People have a tendency just to turn the irrigation system on and not worry about it. They do need work. And SAWS changed the rules to 5 to 10 in the morning. So you only have the morning hours to check to see whether or not you have any problems with your sprinkler system. So they used to could be 7 to 11, 7 to 11, so you could see it. And now you have 9 to 10 and 9 to 10. Yeah, 5 to 10 and 9 to midnight. And so you need to check your sprinkler system. So just don't set it and walk away. Check it. And check your heads and all that kind of stuff. And then get the plant in the right place, in the right space. And I think this is a beautiful landscape, and it's very much a native plant landscape. And if you well-designed, well-managed, watered, well-checked landscape will be beautiful. Cultivate is coming up. Cultivate is September 6th and 7th. I believe it is. Yes. Cultivate is 6th and 7th from 9 to 11. There'll be several presentations of horticulture. And so it's a Zoom call, Zoom, just like we are today, Zoom. And so Cultivate's a big program of ours, Master Gardeners. You can follow us on Facebook. And of course, the SAWS has a great website, gardenstylesanantonio.com. You can sign up for their news, for their emails, and they'll tell you how much water to use and all that kind of stuff. And hotline, our hotline guys are really good. So if you need a hotline, call that number. And I guess that's it. Yeah.
If that thorny grass, how do you get rid of that? What you basically
Thorny grass.
The sandbird.
Oh, sandburrs. Yeah. So you can use a herbicide on them, or you can just keep mowing and they'll go away. Just keep mowing it. Yeah, I had some in mine. They get about this big and they stick on your grandkids' feet and everything. Yeah, and so if you keep cutting it, you cut it regularly. Yeah, cut it a little bit shorter. What kind of grass do you have? You have fescue now? What do you have now? Oh, really? So what kind of grass do you have? Is it Bermuda or buffalo grass, maybe? Send me a picture with you. So you'll send those guys, if you'll send that number a picture, they'll tell you. You'll do that. Any other questions? Oh, sedge?
They supposedly have something that'll kill it. but
I'm
I
telling you.
Dug all of mine
So
up.
the question is about sedge.
Get the nut out of it. You get the plant goes in this far, the nut's down here, and you got to dig to get the nut.
Yeah, it's a difficult one.
That's the right on.
I knew
so
that,
it just
John.
keeps spreading
What's
out.
that? Yeah, that's works. So do you paint it or do you spray it? Yeah, you can paint that too. You can paint it. Yeah, it's getting rid of that. Yeah, Randolph doesn't do it.
It'll burn the top.
Yeah.
so-
About it, but that little nut keeps going. Sledgehammer is the best, yeah. Yeah, yeah. I paint, I had an area that seemed like it just got it every year, so I'd paint it.
The answer to your dye
And the
and
more
the
you pull,
mulch,
the more it goes in.
there was an answer up there, it's soy base. And it's not a big deal. Dyed mulch.
Oh, okay, here's the questions. Okay. Dyed mulch is soy based, no big deal. David's concern is the quality of the wood. Okay. Thanks, Bill. Appreciate that. Texas superstars easy to propagate means the plants are easy professional nurseries to propagate. Right. You can propagate them at home too, Bill. You know that. Our heavy day, I ran a simulation of AI program. 1 inch of rain in 1 hour, 2 inches of clay soil will result in a 5% absorption and a 90. Yeah, I agree with that. And a 5% runoff. 5 inches of our soil, heavy day soil, 10% absorption, 90%, and a well amended 100%. So absolutely. Whoever wrote that, it's absolutely true. Let's see all Bill Swatner. He's giving me a lot of advice today. Thank you, Bill. They're all from Bill? Okay. Let's see. The comments do not need to be public. They're simply informational. Okay. Any other questions? I felt kind of awkward today. I'm sorry. I guess it was Zoom and this thing wasn't working. I don't know. Sorry. But anyway, all I can tell you is, let me just give you a little more drip irrigation real quick. Three things, drip irrigation. Design it properly. So get you a piece of graph paper, design it, and make sure you're happy with the design because you can move it. Install it, use the same suppliers. So if you use Rainbird, use Rainbird. If you're going to use Toro, use Toro. But use the same supplier. And then don't forget it. I was noticing the other day, I kind of let mine kind of go, and then I started watering with my hands, so I didn't kind of worry about it. And I turned mine on, and sure enough, they come apart. And so manage it, because it's not a free event. It will break apart. It will not put the same amount of water out. Those three things are important with drip irrigation. Otherwise, it is the most efficient water method. And unfortunately, you can only water twice a week now. But twice a week on native plants is yes. Under the mulch. I always put mulch. Oh, I experimented. So on top of mulch for flower beds and for drip for the vegetable garden, it's really good. Now my wife doesn't like that because she can't see it get in the water. But for vegetable gardens, definitely on top because you want to make sure you save that water for those vegetables. I've tried both in the regular flower beds. I've used it uncovered and covered, and I like it covered. You get a longer lasting water with it covered. Any other questions? No? Bill gave us quite a bunch of questions. That's good. So thank you for being here, and I really appreciate it. It's one of my favorite presentations. So appreciate you being here. So thank you so much. Have a good day.